Kyle Busch sent his kid a birthday message 2 days prior to his passing. He remarked that Brexton's potential was limitless. He wrote that Samantha and he were pleased with the boy's development. He wrote with the assurance of a guy who thought he had plenty of time. He didn't know those would be his final remarks in public. No one did. Kyle Busch arrived to the Chevrolet Simulator facility in Concord, North Carolina, on Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. Busch had spent many hours honing the instinct that had made him the most successful driver in NASCAR history across all 3 national series. He was operating an equipment that was incapable of harming him. He was in a controlled setting. On Sunday, he was getting ready for a race. He never left. That afternoon, he was taken to a hospital in Charlotte by emergency personnel. On the morning of Thursday, May 21st, his family released a statement informing the racing community of the situation. The statements were devastating and calculated. Severe sickness. There was no more explanation provided. There was no time frame provided. In America and throughout the world, racing enthusiasts held their breath. What many had dreaded and no one could accept was confirmed by NASCAR at 5:40 in the afternoon. At the age of 41, Kyle Thomas Busch, a 2-time Cup Series champion with 234 wins in the NASCAR National Series and the most successful winner in the sport's history, passed away. 3 days remained till the release of the Coca-Cola 600. The list of entries still included his name. This is what you will learn from this video. Not only how he passed away, but also how he lived. The true cost of that number 234. What he built, what he lost, what he battled for when the cameras were off. Samantha's knowledge of him that the garage was unaware of. What Lennox and Brexton will always carry as the albums are part of the narrative. However, they don't tell the complete story. Remain with us. Every successful profession eventually makes the world ask a certain question. Not during the event, not in the midst of the rivalries, the victories, or the commotion, but at the conclusion. This is the question. Was this individual indispensable? The honest response is no for the majority of athletes. The sport is still going strong. There are new names. Someone else gets the records. The world eventually moves on. Busch, Kyle, was unique. He was born in Las Vegas, Nevada, on May 2nd, 1985, a city founded on the notion that the brave are fortunate. That risk is something to pursue rather than something to be afraid of. That the person who wins everything is the one who goes all in when everyone else folds. There is no more appropriate place for him to have been born. Kyle Busch was all in from the time he got into a go-kart around the parking lots and cul-de-sacs of his Las Vegas neighborhood when he was 8 years old. Every time, every race, every lap. His father, Tom, was a mechanic who had moved from Schaumburg, Illinois, with his wife, Gay. He carried the unique American ambition that works quietly, unceasingly, and without complaint rather than making a big deal out of it. Tom was a local racer. It was a pastime, a passion, a means of preserving something that mortgages and office work could not destroy. Kurt, his eldest son, was already racing and moving quickly, attracting the attention of those who knew what speed looked like in its purest, most unadulterated form. Kurt was 7 years older than Kyle. Smaller, louder in some situations, and softer in others. The kind of child that took in everything. His father spoke about engine blocks in a technical language. The lightning of competition pulsed around his brother. The particular hunger of a person who grows up witnessing greatness up close and makes a decision to surpass it without any fanfare or declaration. Before anyone knew what was about to happen, Kurt himself stated it clearly as early as 2001. "You think I'm a pretty good race car driver? Wait until you see my brother," he added, glancing at his younger sibling. "He's the best driver in the family." That was not brotherly affection. That was a verdict delivered by someone who competed for a living. Someone who understood exactly what he was seeing and was honest enough to say it out loud. Kyle entered NASCAR at 16. 16 years old, an age when most young men are navigating high school hallways and Friday night social hierarchies. Kyle Busch was already competing against adults in full-bodied stock cars, learning in real time what it costs to go fast and what it costs even more to be consistently faster than everyone else. He was not cautious. He was not patient in the conventional sense. He was precise in the way that only the genuinely gifted can afford to be. Reckless on the surface, meticulous underneath. By 2005, he was signed with Joe Gibbs Racing. Music, 20 years old. Cup Series, the highest level of the sport. He won Rookie of the Year, and then he started winning everything else. But here's the thing about Kyle Busch that the win column never fully captured. The thing that the standings and the record books and the championship trophies can gesture toward but never quite contain. He did not simply beat people. He made them feel beaten. There was a psychological dimension to his driving that went beyond mechanics and strategy. He raced with controlled fury that was utterly personal. Every lap was a statement. Every overtake was a sentence and an argument he had been having with doubt and dismissal and the world's expectations since he was old enough to understand what expectations were. He had critics, many of them loudly. He was polarizing in the way that only truly dominant athletes can be, because mediocrity does not generate that kind of heat. Fans either loved him with a particular devotion reserved for the misunderstood, or dislike him with a particular intensity reserved for those who win too much and make no apologies for it. He created the Rowdy Nation, a fan base that did not merely support him, but claimed him, identified with him. So in his refusal to be softened something they recognized and needed, he gave them a nickname, Rowdy. He earned it. What is remarkable looking back now is how early the foundation was laid. Not just the talent. Talent alone is never enough. And the history of motorsport is littered with gifted drivers who never became great. But the architecture of what Kyle Busch would build, the wins, the championships, the team ownership, the brand, the family, all of it traces back to those parking lots in Las Vegas to a father with oil-stained hands and a brother with a verdict he had already delivered about who the best driver in the family was. Kyle Busch spent the next 2 decades proving Kurt right. He would do it 234 times. What does it actually take to win 234 races? Not the physical part, not the reflexes, not the endurance, not the hours in the simulator and the gym and the debrief room. Those are the visible costs, the ones that get photographed and celebrated and turned into highlight reels. The real cost is something else entirely. Something that does not show up in the statistics and cannot be captured in a trophy presentation. The real cost is what you become in the process. Kyle Busch joined Joe Gibbs Racing in 2005 as a 20-year-old from Las Vegas who had already won Rookie of the Year in the Cup Series with Hendrick Motorsports and had still been released. Think about that for a moment. The man who would become the sport's all-time wins leader across all 3 national series was let go before the age of 20. Released. Moved on from the kind of institutional rejection that ends careers before they begin. That sends talented young men home to reconsider everything they believed about themselves. Kyle Busch did not reconsider. He recalibrated. At Joe Gibbs Racing, surrounded by the structure and resources of one of NASCAR's premier organizations, something that had always been present in Kyle began to crystallize into something undeniable. He was not merely fast. He was comprehensively fast. Fast on superspeedways and road courses and short tracks and mile-and-a-half intermediates. Fast in the rain and the heat and the last lap with everything on the line. Most drivers have a strength and a weakness. Kyle Busch seemed to have only strengths and a competitive fury that refused to acknowledge the concept of weakness at all. The wins came quickly, then they came constantly. He won the Coca-Cola 600 in 2018, the longest race on the NASCAR calendar, 500 miles of sustained concentration and physical punishment under the Charlotte lights. He stood in victory lane not as a man who had merely won a race, but as a man who had willed an outcome into existence through sheer force of preparation and refusal. That victory meant something particular because Charlotte was home, because the fans in those stands had opinions about him, complicated, passionate, divided opinions, and he had answered every one of them in the most direct language available, forward motion. But the championships are where the full architecture of his greatness becomes visible. 2015, the first Cup Series title. It did not come easily, and nothing about the past suggested it would. Kyle had finished as low as 18th in the standings in previous seasons. He had been brilliant and then inconsistent, dominant, and then derailed, the kind of driver whose ceiling was so obvious and so high that the gaps between it and his results seemed almost inexplicable. And then in 2015, everything converged. The team, the car, the preparation, the emotional maturity that comes only from living through enough failure to understand what it costs and what it is worth. All of it came together at once. He was Cup Series champion, the boy from Las Vegas, the kid who had been released at 20. The second championship in 2019 was, if anything, more meaningful because it was not beginner's luck. It was not the story of a prodigy finding his moment and riding it. It was confirmation. It was a universe agreeing a second time in the most formal language available that what Kyle Busch was doing in those race cars was not a fluke or a phase or a product of favorable circumstances. It was mastery. And then there was a truck series, the Xfinity Series, the parallel careers that most Cup Series champions treat as obligations, brief appearances for sponsor commitments and contractual reasons that Kyle Busch treated as genuine competitions, genuine opportunities to win, genuine expressions of what he was. 69 victories in the Truck Series, 102 victories in what is now called the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Both records, both untouchable by any current driver on any current trajectory.